Hello, my name is Dan Hennen. Today is November 7th, 2019, and this episode is called Crowley Case Updates, Getting a Visual. Tonight's episode is going to bring closure to about a half a dozen topics on the David Crowley case. And I've been jotting down some notes, and I think it's best, some people learn better with the visual rather than going through tons of forensic reports, lab reports, crime scene photos, and things like that that they're presented with, and then to actually see it in laid out physically. And so what I've done today is set up a couple of couches near a wall to make it look like the Crowley living room wall, because I want to start off first by talking about the blood writing on the wall and show you where there's inconsistencies with this story. Now here's a picture of the wall in the Crowley home with a sectional sofa in front of it. The question is, who did the writing and how did they do the writing? According to the official theory, David Crowley did the writing in Comel's blood using his hands. Now the question, the discrepancy with that is this. There were no fingerprints found of anyone's blood, no bloody fingerprints on that wall. Markings were done on the wall. Someone obviously performed writing the phrase Allahu Akbar on that wall. But if you'd use your fingerprints to write the letters, the actual fingers would leave fingerprints behind, which would be able to be identified as to who the culprit was, to actually who did the writing. So there's speculation if someone used gloves. There's speculation if David's right hand was missing at the scene, if his hand was perhaps cut off and his hand was used to do or perform the writing. And so here's what we got, some of the problems with some of this story here from the official narrative. The first question that many people ask is, there should be tons of blood dripped onto that cloth sofa from doing the writing and going back and forth from the body to do the writing. And so I'm going to do the experiment here today just to give you a visual of what that would look like for whoever did this job. So here is a sofa and a wall. Allegedly, the person would have had to get up here and write Allahu Akbar on the wall with their, I'm not saying right or left hand, I'm just saying whichever hand they used to write it, they had to get onto the sofa and write it. Now the body of Comel, because we know it was her blood. That's been proven. Whoever used it was her blood. And she was found right in a corner, snug up against the corner of the sofa, with her hands crossed underneath her. And so Comel was lying basically like this. So that presents the other story, which we'll get into later. Remember, hands crossed underneath, both hands missing, laying underneath, and the dog ate them both off, was the official narrative. The dog ate both hands off, while at the same time hands were crossed, snug up against the corner. There's no way the dog could even get in there to perform that on one of those hands, much less the other one. So the body's laying there. Here's what we've got. If David was reaching down to get blood to then do writing, he would have to come back down and get some more and write. Get some more and finish the writing. What the speculation is, which is probably the case, is that something was used to contain the blood, so the person only had to dip in to do the writing. I'm just using a simple plastic bowl. Now, you go up there one time and you're not going back and forth. The problem is, if something like this was used, we've got two problems. Number one, where is it? It was not found at the scene. There was no bowl found at the scene. There was no bloody bowl found at the scene. And if they rinsed it out down some drain, there was no blood in the sinks. If something like this was used, someone has it today, or it's been disposed of. Nothing in the crime scene photos show anything like this. If David Crowley did it, he would have set it right there below him and ended his life. But there's no bowl. Now the other question is, how would Camel's blood get into the bowl? How would the blood be drained from her body into something like this to get it easy to apply on that wall? So I'm leaving it up to the listeners here to do that. The other question is, there's no fingerprints on that wall. Speculation in the justice group is that more than likely the perpetrator used a pair of gloves to do the writing on the wall because there's no fingerprints on that wall. The question is, and this is what we want the Justice Page members and those watching videos like this to keep in mind, to be able to use their critical thinking. Remember, there's no fingerprints. A naked finger would have left fingerprints behind. There was none. More than likely, it's safe to assume gloves were used, latex gloves, rubber gloves, something. But they were not found at the scene. No gloves found. And they obviously weren't in the trash. Photographs of each of the trash were taken by police technicians. So there's gloves out there somewhere, either disposed of or sitting out there to this day that someone's got it, potentially as a trophy. So we've got two issues with that whole scenario. Now, David Crowley, if his hand was cut off, he was missing his right hand. Only photo left was his left hand, which was in a mummified state, almost as if it was tied or under restraints for some time to cause it to mummify faster than the rest of his body. Right hand was missing. Was it cut off? Was it used by the perpetrators to paint on the wall? Well, the answer to that is also no. His hand, whether if it was attached to his body or not, would leave fingerprints. Fingerprints would be left behind on that wall for detectives to go into, test, and pull fingerprints off of that wall. Now, did David Crowley, or the perpetrator, put a glove on David Crowley's right hand that's missing and perform the writing? Maybe so. I think that if the perpetrators went so far to use his hand to blame it, the blood writing, to show evidence, they would not put a glove on it. Fingerprints would be all over. The detectives would match the fingerprints to David, and obviously you've got your killer because the fingerprints traced it. So the odds of someone putting a glove on a cut-off hand to dip it in blood to do writing is possible but not probable. So the question is, we've got a bowl, some kind of container, a pail, something that the perpetrator or perpetrators used to dip in to write. Now, what detectives did find, this is how they narrowed it down when reading the police report, you've got to be able to censor out what they're telling you versus what they are also trying to conceal to you. Evidence proved that David's DNA was on that wall. David Crowley's DNA. But DNA is fingerprint, finger touch, skin cells, not in the blood, but on that wall. Now, a typical homeowner is going to use a hammer and hang up a clock, a picture frame, something on the wall. Now, there's nothing on that wall except a clock. David owned the home. David lived in the home for a year. Your fingerprints, not your fingerprints, but touch DNA is going to be on that wall. For instance, David Crowley reading a bedtime story book to Ranny, DNA everywhere, right here. So what they did, and what it's up for the user to decipher, is of course David's DNA is going to be on that wall. Touch DNA, skin cells. Police report never ever said that his blood DNA was on that wall. There was blood on the wall, which is Comel's. They assumed it was David who did it. That's the part that's up for conjecture. So there's issues with the whole blood writing on that wall. And I'll go back to that wall once again. As you can see, there's a clock up there. There's nothing else on the wall. But by the nature of the beast, David is a homeowner. His DNA, his touch DNA, or his fingerprints would stand to reason to be on that wall regardless. But we can't assume that that was part of the crime. That's what they did to link it, though, the blood on the wall. Now, we also have the most blood-filled item in that living room where the crime scene was. Keep in mind that there was not a lot of blood there. The bodies were there. Little bits of blood was there. Lots of hair all over the place. But only the one spot in that living room where there was blood soaked in on the furniture, was on a recliner. And here's what that'll look like. For instance, the edge of the recliner was the bottom portion down by the floor. This was soaked straight through with blood. Keep in mind, Comel was over here, Ranny was over there, and David was farther away yet. There was no body here. And this is just, once again, this is just the couch, but where the recliner was, there was no body. So the question there, no body, it looked, the blood-soaked furniture, that recliner cushion, I would assume, someone else can point me out if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that's where someone's head was at one point after being shot and blood was pouring out and soaking into that cushion. The crime scene showed that no body was there, but obviously body was there at one point, unless the recliner was moved or a person was moved. What we know, or what it's alleged, is that none of the bodies were moved. So that we can rule out right away. Someone's body was there on that crime scene photo at one point. The blood just wouldn't get there by itself. Very unlikely that the recliner was moved. But someone's head was up against that recliner at some point. Now the question is, who moved the bodies and why? There's some speculation that police did it after they arrived at the scene. There's some speculation that the killers did it. And there is some speculation that David Crowley did it before he killed his family. For some reason, staging the scene, moving things around. The fact of the matter is, someone's body was up next to that recliner. but we don't see any information in the detective reports, no further research on whose it was, no testing of the blood to determine whose blood it even was. And so these are the things we want you to look for. Use your brain, use critical thinking when you go through these reports, these lab tests reports. I know it seems intimidating to go through hundreds of pages of lab and forensic reports, but just look for the easy things like that. Someone's head was obviously against that cushion on the recliner, but when? Police arrived at the scene, allegedly, and no one was there. The bodies were already laid out. So the scene was staged to some extent. We already know that. So those are the types of things to look for. Hair is the next question. There was hair all over the place. Long, black hair. Oh, that would be Kamel or Ranya's hair. And so people ask that are new to the case, why is there so much hair? What happened to the hair? Why is there hair everywhere? Good question, but that's not the important question. The important question is, how was the hair removed? There was a knife at the scene. There could have been a scissors used, but regardless if it's a knife or a scissors and the hair was cut off, the ends of those hairs, the individual hairs, would have a straight snip as if they were cut. If there was a struggle and hair was yanked out from the scalp, yanked out, pulled out, something to that effect, or even due to a normal cause of decomposition over months or weeks, naturally would have fallen out of the hair. That's not going to have a clean slice. Only a scissors or knife would have a clean slice when looked at under a microscope. The other hair, if yanked out, would still show the follicles attached to the skin. There'd be a little bulb at the end. It would not be a slice. That's the question. Was testing done on that? No. There was no testing done on the hair. There's hair all over the place. The first question is, was it yanked out, pulled out, or cut off? How it got there, I don't think matters. Why it's there, I don't think it matters. It's all part of staging the scene. But the question we need to ask is, were the hair pieces have the follicles attached, as if they were yanked in clumps, or were they cut? Now we know a dog was left at the scene, Paleo, the family dog. The dog could have yanked with the dog's teeth and possibly pulled it off, possibly. But with the dog being there, the dog certainly wouldn't, there would be no the straight edge snipping, unless of course Paleo got the scissors out or the knife. So we got to think of things in that context, in that stage. We know the scene was staged. We know evidence proves that David didn't do this. We're not fighting that battle anymore. We already know that David Crowley did not do this because he couldn't have done this. Now, folks new to the case usually come from after watching that documentary by Eric Nelson. And they come over and join the page and say, you know what? David had mental illness. David had depression. David had PTSD. There was paranormal activity in the home. There was drugs involved. There was alcohol involved. There was hallucinogens involved. For those people that say any of those, that long list of excuses or reasons, those may all be true. Every one of those could be true from a factual standpoint. That did not cause the death of these three individuals. And remember now, the death of these three, David, Kamel, and Rania. Here's a Christmas photo from 2 years before the deaths. Now they want you to believe that these things happened, and they'll lead you down the rabbit hole of searching on a never-ending goose chase as if, did David drink? Did he use drugs? Was there hallucinogens? That's got nothing to do with anything in this case. The bullet that went through David's head, allegedly found in the attic, didn't have blood, tissue, or brain matter on it. Just had his touch DNA, like he handled it. He would have handled each bullet when loading the magazine. So all of his bullets would have his touch DNA on it. So police cannot conclude, without having the bullet that killed the man, that he did it. And also keep in mind, a side note, no fingerprints found on the gun. So someone wiped down the gun, someone planted or staged a bullet hole in the ceiling that has nothing to do with anything. And so these are all forms of distraction to keep people focused on other things instead of focusing on the real deal. So we got the hair issue, we've got the body issue of Camille in the corner, hands missing underneath her, blamed on the dog eating them. Bullet in the attic wasn't found until the next month. February of 2015, the bullet in the attic was found. It's known as the infamous item number 57. It was fired. It was found in the attic. I don't know where it was fired, but it came from that gun, and it had touched DNA on it only. So there's a hole in the ceiling that Chris Klein tells police about a month afterwards. Police come, look at the ceiling when they come into the entranceway. Remember now, mind you, this is in the living room where the entire crime scene took place. They said police must have missed it. They must have missed the crime, the bullet hole in the ceiling. The most important bullet in the crime, when placing the blame on David Crowley, is that bullet number 57. Police didn't even have it for a month later. Then they find it in the attic. This is after a 911 call came out on January 19th saying there's suspicious activity in the home. Chris Klein was in the house with a handful of other folks. Remember, the 19th. We know from the police reports that the professional biohazard cleaners were in the house on January 20th. So the question is, they found a bullet fragment that came out of the rug in the living room on the 20th of January, 3 days later. The 911 call for suspicious activity came on the 19th. These folks were in the house. Now the question is, was that bullet hole there on the 17th when investigators, crime scene technicians, the medical examiner was on site, the officers, the detectives, there must have been 20 people in that house. And the Gray State guys are claiming, Gray State guys, the alleged friends of David Crowley, are claiming that police and everyone in that house must have simply missed that bullet hole in the ceiling. Now, with the bullet hole, as with anything else, investigators would have taken a photograph here, a photograph here, 3 or 4 different variations of a hole in the ceiling, zoomed in, backwards, what level of details. There would have been multiple photos of a bullet hole. There was no photos of the bullet hole on January 17th when police got there. Now, police, I think, in the process right now with Officer Detective James Gummert, the lead detective, is answering a question from Greg Fernandez, because Gummert does think that in one of the photos, or some of the photos, that detectives did show that they did take photographs of that bullet hole, meaning that they were aware of it. Remember now, the Upper Valley Police Department, they're in a corner, they're backed into a corner here. If they weren't aware of it and it was there, they're going to look really bad by missing something so obvious. If it was planted later, and it legitimately wasn't there on January 17th when detectives got there, then they just find themselves getting duped again by the perpetrators, whoever made the hole there a couple days later, which is the Gray State team and David Crowley's brother and potentially his father. They were in the house on the 19th. This is their own statements. This is not me making it up. This is per the police reports and per the testimony given to detectives. They were in that house on January 19th. Now, what were they doing? I don't know. Officially, they were helping organize some things for the family and help getting things ready for the funeral and memorial service. But you have to ask yourself the question. You have to ask yourself the question, what was so urgent to get into that house to start preparing for the memorial service and start getting things arranged on the 19th of January after a triple homicide took place at that very location 2 days earlier? Keep in mind, the cleaners weren't there. They may have been there already, but they weren't done because they still came back and were cleaning on the 20th of January. So I think the cleaners wrapped up on either the 20th, 21st, 20 seconds, sometime in that time frame, the cleaners professionally cleaned the house and then opened it up to the public or to the family. But while cleaners are in the house, no one's supposed to be in that house doing anything. And that's a key point to remember. If the cleaners are in that house after the police open it up to the cleaners to clean, there still should be no one coming through that house, much less 5 or 6 guys helping organize things for the family's memorial service. So now you have to ask yourself the next question: why was there such an urgent need to get into that house? Well, mistakes were made in the staging of this crime. The perpetrators realized that it wasn't a nice, tidy crime scene. There was no bullet that killed David Crowley. There was no bullet. He died of a suicide. They knew that when the autopsy took place, and they didn't find the bullet in the head, they didn't find it laying at the scene, and they didn't find it in a wall or a ceiling, it had to have been in that house. There was no bullet. The bullet wasn't there. Police didn't find the bullet. So there comes a need now, a requirement for the perpetrators to get back into the house to plant that evidence so everything ties out. Now, the detectives are already duped once. They wrapped up this whole crime scene on the 17th, kind of put the finishing touches on it the 18th, and I think by that 18th or 19th day, the press releases were already going out as they were treating it as a double homicide followed by a suicide by David Crowley, a crazed lunatic from the alt-right, which is not true. I created the Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook page on January 19th, that morning, when things already didn't make sense to me, and I lived 30 minutes away. So I had set up the Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook group before the bullet was even there, before the cleaners were done, and before that 911 phone call came in from a neighbor saying there's suspicious activity going on in the house that doesn't relate to the cleaners. There's a GMC pickup truck there, which turned out to be Chris Klein's. Klein says he got in the house because he got permission from Dan Crowley Sr., that's David Crowley's father, who lives 45 minutes away. Dan Crowley Sr. tells police that he was never in the house with Chris Klein. But Dan Crowley Jr. was in the house, along with, I think it was Adam Chambor, Danny August Mason, and Mason Hendricks. There was a handful of guys in that house on the 19th. So the question now comes down to, why aren't police focusing on those guys in the house before the cleaning was done? But they're too busy trying to find photos of a bullet to avoid themselves from looking bad from missing it. When I don't think that bullet hole was there till the 19th. They came in there on the 19th, my opinion, fired the round into the ceiling, left the attic, bullet roll around up in the attic, let the police find it when they came on in February, and said, here's the missing bullet, this is the thing that ties it all together, David did it. So now we're getting into he said, she said, official story, distraction story, misinfo, disinfo, and then we've got shills and trolls hitting the justice page, keeping everyone off track on purpose. So keep an eye out for those types of things and that type of behavior and that type of storyline, because it's all done on purpose. Everyone here is playing a role, the bad guys, the perpetrators. They're playing a role. The cast of characters each have a role, and they're playing it. And some are playing it very, very well. So once you see through that charade and see what's really going on and ask the real questions, you'll know. Was Apple Valley Police actually covering it up? Or were they trying to avoid having a black eye after treating this case so horrendously? Or what's worse yet, are they actually in on the cover-up? Either way, it's a lose-lose situation. So I got the blood, I've got the ceiling. So now the question with the ceiling is something that hasn't been done yet. We need some help from the members of the Justice page. We need a volunteer to do a test experiment for us. Because the bullet hole in the ceiling, we want to find out if that bullet hole was fired directly into the ceiling or if it potentially went through someone's head and then subsequently through the ceiling. The easy key for this is the nice little fact that David Crowley allegedly used hollow point bullets in his .40 caliber Springfield handgun. Hollow point bullets, for those new to this case, are something that gang members use. They're used for killing, not hurting, not injuring, but killing things. It's not just a slug that flies through and hits you like a small round caliber small round that can come in and out of the body, and you could live through it. This is a .40 caliber, large caliber, and a hollow point, which means that once it strikes the object, it mushrooms out and spins through, mushrooming out into the sharp edge coming out and spinning through, grabbing everything in its wake. Skin, brain matter, tissue, blood. It leaves a small hole opening if you were to shoot yourself in the head, and a much larger hole coming out. Now, David's head was not there, so we couldn't tell how small the opening was in relation to how big the exit wound was. But we do know that hollow point bullets were used. If David did what the official narrative said, was shot himself with his left hand through his right temple, head down, shot up, bullet goes through the ceiling, that is plausible. Not probable. That's why we get the whole, remember the Gray State guys were saying that David was on his knees, killed himself on his knees after performing some kind of ritual ceremony deal. He must have been on his knees looking down. The key word these guys keep saying is that David was looking down when he shot himself. That's the only explanation for the bullet to get into the ceiling. That's another mistake that these individuals made. Bullets in the ceiling. The trajectory of the bullet needs to come from somewhere very low to go very high at that angle. The next question for police is, was trajectory testing done in that bullet hole? In the ceiling bullet hole, was a trajectory test done? And there's two ways to do it. There's a long, straight, firm rods that you can stick in at that angle to see where the shooting took place, or you can use a string to see what angle it entered that ceiling is versus where it came from. That should, in that room, identify exactly where that shot took place. Doesn't matter who fired it, what weapon it was, they'll know where that shot originated from. And right now, they can't get it down to that low from someone on the ground in a kneeling position shooting himself this way. Now, David is right-handed. Right hand was missing. The gun was found near the left hand, which means the perpetrators, whoever staged the scene, wanted us to believe that David used his left hand, shot himself through the right temple, up here. Another mistake is they laid the gun next to his left hand, within inches of his left hand. David wasn't left-handed, never fired a gun from his left hand ever. The problem is, his entrance wound was somewhere on the right side of the head because the exit wound was back on the left side. So what we need someone to do, because what I'm getting at is the hollow point, when it hits the first thing it hits, it mushrooms out. If that weapon was fired by someone staging the scene just to shoot the hole up there and it didn't go through anything, it's going to be a very small a hole. I'm not sure how many millimeters big into that ceiling. If it went through David's head, or anything else for that matter, it'd be a much larger hole into that ceiling, because it had to go through something first, explode out, mushroom, and then go up through that ceiling sheetrock into the attic. So here's what I'm asking our members to do. Those of you who have a registered weapon and have access to a 40 caliber handgun and have access to a firing range is get 6 rounds of 40 hollow point 40 caliber bullets, go to a range with a large section of sheetrock, and I would say fire 3 shots in it, different angles, high, low, left to right, and just measure the width of that hole that hasn't gone through anything, that hasn't impacted anything except just the sheetrock. And then measure those 3 holes, add them up, divide by 3, get an average of what a whole ballpark figure of what a hole would look like that has been impacted by a bullet that has not yet mushroomed. Then go to your favorite grocery store and buy 3 coconuts, set them up on a table, and put the sheetrock behind it, and fire 3 more shots, 1 through each coconut. Coconut resembles something similar to a human head. When something strikes the coconut and then subsequently goes through that sheetrock, measure the distance then of that mushroomed bullet on the back end. After it went through the coconut, through the sheetrock, you're going to have a higher, bigger, larger hole, in other words. Measure those in centimeters, let's say. Add them up, divide by 3, get an average. Then you'll have an average of a projectile that hasn't gone through anything first, and a projectile width that has already mushroomed. Here we go. I draw it up for you. Get an idea of, just do a simple test like that with 6 bullets. Use a ruler. Pause this if you need to. I wrote the instructions on the bottom. Get a ruler, measure it, and then we'll get the difference of that size of a straight projectile or one that's already been mushroomed. And then we can match it up with the crime scene photos that the Apple Valley Police took in February of 2015 of the width of that hole. That hole, if it's the size of a mushroomed bullet, means it went through something, and more likely it was David or somebody. If it is a small size of the small hole that didn't impact anything, the police don't have a story then whatsoever. That means it didn't go through David's head or hit anything else. It was directly fired into the sheetrock from someone in that living room, just to make it look good. And we can get the measurements then from the police photos of the actual hole in that ceiling. And so if we can get the volunteers' help from something to that effect to do a test study, that'd be greatly appreciated, because that's really the diameter in centimeters of a hole mushroomed. It's going to be one or the other. That the police have either one or the other. It's going to be the big one or the small one. It can't be somewhere in between. It either had to go through something or somebody, or someone came in there, I think, on the 19th and fired a shot, and then said, "Hey, cops, you forgot it. You look what you missed." And keep in mind that also. When we hear about people at a scene going back and asking detectives to research something that they missed the first time around, you have to ask yourselves the question, how did they know it was missed? How did they know it was missed? They were screaming, "Missed, missed, missed." A good detective should have said, "How do you know we missed it?" Now, when the family came after the cleaners were done to go in that house, speculation was, the section of the blood writing was painted in white. Someone painted over that section of the wall in white so people wouldn't have to see the Allahu Akbar. The question is, who painted it white? Did police order someone to paint it? Not their job. I doubt that happened. Did they order the cleaning crew to paint it? I could also use some help here from those listening in on the show. I don't know what cleaning crews do. I believe it's their job to clean up something, not to repaint or paint anything at all in the site of a homicide. Did they go run to the store and buy some white paint and paint it up per police direction? I would consider that odd. The question is, who painted it and why? Who gave the direction, I guess, is the better question. Who directed someone to paint over that writing? Now, it could have came from the family too. It could have come from the Alam family, the Crowley family, to say, you know what, we don't want to get into that whole Allahu Akbar Muslim slant. How about you paint that, get rid of it? We don't want to see it. We don't even want it making the news. That could be the case too. Now, when it comes up to the Muslim Islamic slant, whether this was a hit, someone angry about converting a hit job, an extremist hit job, we always keep these angles going because we see the Quran on the floor, we see the submit to Allah now, and we see Allahu Akbar written on the wall. Whoever staged the scene was hell-bent on focusing on this whole Islamic Muslim angle. But remember, you have to ask yourself, the people staging this crime scene, not too bright. Comel graduated from Baylor University in Texas, near where she grew up, or where they were living. She went to four-year school, four-year college, Baylor. Baylor is a private Christian university. Private Christian university. She was there before they even had gotten married, had a baby, anything else. So I don't believe the Alam family was too against the Christian ideologies. They sent their daughter to a Christian college. So once again, the whole Muslim Islamic angle is slanted. It's to get you to look into something that's not there. It's overstaging the scene. One of the biggest mistakes. I don't know if she converted before or after the wedding. If she converted at all, I personally don't care if she converted. This wasn't a Muslim Islamic hate crime anyway, because she had already gotten her master's degree from the University of Minnesota. So years earlier, when she went to Baylor Christian private university, always do your homework first. Always do your research. Because it's the little things like this. This is something that a detective from Apple Valley could have come up with and said, I can't believe this is an Islamic hate crime or something because she married a Christian. She spent 4 years at a Christian university that obviously her parents allowed her to go through and helped possibly fund her way to go there. Regardless, they blessed her okay to go there. So that's a sidetrack. It's all it is to sidetrack, and it's all distraction. And it's the little things is how these folks are running up to problems here with their poor staging of the crime scene. Now, the last thing before I let you go tonight is we know one of the perpetrators. I can't say perpetrators. One of the Gray State friends, David Crowley's alleged best friend, is Sean Wright. Now, Sean Wright is this gentleman right here. Sean Wright was very active in the Gray State Project, very active in the documentary. He's the one that told David Crowley on Facebook, please don't push this stuff out there in the documentary. I can go to prison for this. The tax stuff. And he went on to say, by the way, call me, and left a cell phone number. And this cell phone number was left on a Facebook post, not an instant message, not a private messenger. He left it on his comment saying, please call me. So you have to ask yourself the question, if you consider someone your best friend, would you give them your phone number on a Facebook post and say, please reach out and call me? So Sean Wright being a best friend of David Crowley is another far-fetched illusion. That is certainly not the case, and I think when David Crowley saw his inner circle as exposing this very inner circle of potential alleged friends as the very snakes within his project, that's when he decided to gain a new trustworthy group and he's working by himself essentially and wanted to get all new layer of friends that were trustworthy. He had some trust issues with these gentlemen, and it wasn't too good. Now back to Sean Wright. Sean Wright is the only person of the group was to have had allegedly crime scene photos on his cellular phone of the Crowley family. And when I say crime scene photos, these are not police crime scene photos. These were photos of the crime taken on a cell phone and later shared with others. Now, the question you have to ask yourself is, why would Sean Wright be in possession of any crime scene photos? I can't imagine a scenario where someone would forward him the actual police crime scene photos and then he would show them off to other people on his smartphone. The photos, alleged photos of these 5 or 6 crime scene photos from the crime scene that were not taken by crime scene detective photographers, but someone who was actually at the crime scene. Now, we know no one would be eligible to be at the crime scene once police got there. It's cordoned off, it's roped off, and the bodies are taken out. There's no chance for a civilian to have any kind of photographic options to take photos of the bodies. The one in particular is the one of a hand at the crime scene, a human adult hand. Now, once we hear this information of Sean Wright having photos of a hand at the crime scene, you have to go back and ask yourself a question. Comel didn't have any hands. David only had one hand. That hand was the popular image we all saw on the crime scene photos, a mummified left hand that looked like leather. The image he was showing off of a human hand was not that hand. So if you do your critical thinking, narrow down how he would have in his possession a photo of a human hand at the crime scene, adult, not of the child. The only way you'd have the hand is if someone who took that photo was there at the crime scene. So, keep that in mind. My name is Dan Hennen. This is Crowley Case Updates, getting a visual on November 7th, 2019. Thanks for listening, and please leave your comments below. Hello, my name is Dan Hennen. Today is December 19th, 2018, and I'll be doing an episode on the Crowley Case Updates. Tonight's episode is called Facts and Speculation, Facts versus Speculation. And the reason I'm doing this episode tonight is we're getting a lot of new members to the page, a lot of new members on the group, and a lot of people following this case. And I mean a lot. There's been a whole influx of new people, and what I find is a lot of the various questions and comments, and some of the messages that I get directly, and some of the posts on other Facebook pages and on YouTube is asking some questions that we now have answers to. So since the 4 years now that this has been going on, we've got lab results, we've got FOIA requests, we've got police reports, we've got BCA information, we've got new people coming forward with shedding lights on things, we've got new records, and we've got new information. And with that comes a lot of theories, speculation, facts, and I think it's hard for the new members. This is an overwhelming case. There's no other easier way Hello, today is May 25th, 2015. My name is Dan Hennen. We'll be giving an update on today's broadcast on the curious case of Mr. Eric Sayward. Last week I published the latest timeline of events on the Crowley case, and someone reached out to me with a curious comment about who is this Mr. Eric Sayward. Really relates to this post here on the timeline. This was back on February 2nd of 2015. This is just now 2 to 3 weeks after. At 10:49 a.m., Facebook user named Eric Sayward sends the following instant message to Mr. Hennen. Quote, "You say one more thing about Crowley and I will pay you a visit." So that was the post. That was the post on my instant message on Facebook. And after this timeline went out, one person in particular came forward and says, "What is it? Whatever came of this guy? How does he fit into the mix?" And so I went back and realized that I had actually been in an instant message exchange with this fellow, and I'll post it here on the broadcast. This was February 2nd, and so it starts off. I pulled it up here. And it says, "Say one more thing about Crowley, and I will pay you a visit." I responded back, "Wow, dude, who is this? And do you believe the official narrative?" At 10:55 a.m., Eric responded with, "I'm a good friend of his, and we already have people on it." I responded back, "So you believe he did this?" Eric Sayward, "I don't believe anything until the facts are come in. I just don't want his name tossed all over the place. We have this covered." I think that's very strange as far as we're just talking about a dead man here. David Crowley at this time has been dead for about 3 weeks. I don't know why it's so concerning to Eric Sayward why Crowley's name would be being tossed all over the place. And so I respond back, "Yes, very strange, the whole case. You know he didn't do it, right? Let me know if you want to discuss this further. It has certainly piqued my interest. We need to do the best we can to try to expose these lunatics." And then I wrap up by responding to his threat. "Let me know when the visit will come. I'll be looking forward to it." Eric responds back, "I knew David very well. Very, very well. He was not the type to do something like this. But on the flip side, war is an ugly thing. An ugly, ugly thing. I was in Desert Storm and my father was in Vietnam. So I grew up with the long-term effects of war." I respond back, "So, possible PTSD? Sean Wright says him and Comel both agreed to do it. That doesn't explain it either." Eric Sayward responded, "When did he say that?" I responded, "On his posts. He said it 3 different times. Check the logs in PDF format. We're just looking for the truth here, that's all. And one day the truth will come out. But Sean Wright says, quote, the truth will never come out, unquote." Eric Sayward responds back, "Of course. I love Sean, but we disagree on some stuff." I write back, "Why would he make that statement?" Eric, "I have no clue." Dan, "Whole thing is goofy and follows very closely how these hits are carried out. I personally don't buy the PTSD. The strange thing is all the threats that keep coming out. Why? God bless." Eric Sayward, "What threats?" Dan, "Your threat and the Sean Wright threats. How does it help to make threats? That doesn't solve anything. You would think you would want the truth to come out, right? What exactly does that mean?" Eric, "Yeah, but I don't want people tossing his name all over the place. We are still having a hard time dealing with this. Dan, I would recommend to stay off this page. Still too early. Emotions are still playing a big part. Nobody here is saying anything disrespectful about David. Those who agree with the official narrative make me sick, and that is very disrespectful to think that this man did this. And then no response. So that was my correspondence with this, Eric. I wanted to look into him further. See, how does Eric fit into all this? From La Crosse, Wisconsin. For those of you who don't know, it's right on the border of Minnesota and Wisconsin, right on the border. Born 6/13/72, places him at 45 years old. Eric James Sayward attended 8 schools. Number 2 here on that list. I'm going to go through each one of these. Onalaska High School. Now that's in Wisconsin. Looks like he attended there from 91 to 92. Now, being born in 1972 places him probably to graduate high school in the year 1990. That's just my guess. So I don't get this 91 to 92. Then number 3, University of Wisconsin La Crosse, 88 to 91. 1988 would have placed Mr. Shaw, Eric Sayward, at 16 years of age while he enrolled in the university. So perhaps that could be extremely gifted, extremely smart. And then Arcadia, number 4, Arcadia High School, 1988 through 1990. That would make sense. Number 5, Holman High School, 87 to 91. That's 4 years there. Kind of makes sense. Number 6, Melrose Mindoro High School, 82 to 84. Now keep in mind, Eric was born in 72, so if this is correct, he would have been 10 years old when he attended Melrose Mindoro High School. Next one, number 7, Lake Placid High School, 1980. This cannot be the same Eric, as this would have been an 8-year-old attending high school. And the number 8, Central High School, 1977 through 1980. This is most certainly not accurate, as Eric Sayward was 5 years old at the time. So let's dig deeper. Let's find out who this is. I'm still struggling with the connection to this case. Now we found Eric James Sayward here, Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. Professional status, CEO at Whizbin Communications, Inc. Well, if he went to the university at age 16, doesn't surprise me that he's a CEO. That could very well be true. I did another search. It came up as CEO of Whizbin Communications. Makes sense. And LinkedIn, Whizbin Communications. Whizbin is a nationwide ISP delivering DSL internet, web development, and VoIP services. Started in 1998 to present. It's been with the company for 20 years. States he's the CEO. This also makes sense. Long time. Education, University of Wisconsin, La Crosse. So sure enough, if he did attend that university there for 3 years, it could certainly be it. But if he entered at age 16, that could very possibly be the case. Let's look into Whizbin Communications. Very interested to see what this company is all about. Has 8 followers, based in Madison, Wisconsin. It's a computer networking company. About us. Whizbin is a nationwide ISP delivering high-speed DSL and VoIP services, as well as ad, web development, and hosting. This is on LinkedIn here. This is actually the company site. And so the About Us is listed 3 times. Usually when you see that, when you make the post, if you're setting up your company's LinkedIn website, you will save it, post it, make sure it goes public, or publish it, and then make sure the editing, grammar, spelling, all that stuff is good to go. And it's odd that About Us is listed 3 times. Looks like just as an error. Perhaps no one checked it. Company details: Whizbin.com, headquarters Madison, founded in '98, privately held company, and employees 2 to 10. So the company website is Whizbin.com. I'm going to go pull that up. Whizbin.com. And what comes up is an index of, and then 5 bullet points with some underlined hyperlinks. Not really a website, not a corporate web presence, not a professional looking website. Looks like just the index here of a email scraper, functions, images, and a directory called Victor1. If I go to Victor1, it presents me here. There's a screenshot of Victor1. It's just a login for the member area, asking you to log in or register. I'm not sure what you're registering for here, but it's called Obit Data, Victor1. So it doesn't look like a professional website. It doesn't give any information about what the company actually does, and the only page that comes up here, other than those links, are just this Victor page for Obit Data. I'd like to know more about that. Not sure what that is. Please leave your comments below if you can think of it. It says search members or access your admin panel. Looks like a type of a login page here for administrators, perhaps. So let's see this. Let's see more about this Eric Sayward. This doesn't tell me much about Whizbin or what it does or what they do or what they do as a company. Now I see this on a search, on a Google search, comes up Eric Sayward, Sean Wright, and We Are Change on 9/11 events in New York, and the latest truther, Sarah Palin. If you look at the date of this article, it's September 9th, 2011, authored by Kevin Barrett. Now Kevin Barrett's a good truther. I've spoken with him before, done an interview with him before actually talking about this case. So he's a good guy. 2011, Truth Jihad Radio. That's a truther station there. And they're talking about We Are Change from Wisconsin. Now, I always see Sean Wright's name active, and also We Are Change in Minnesota and California, and Eric Sayward. So now I think we've got the right Eric Sayward. The next thing I see is Eric Sayward of We Are Change with Tim Watts and Sean Wright. This is a post from August 2012. Eric Sayward is hosting. Eric's a former U.S. Army demolition specialist and knew controlled demolitions when he saw them on 9/11. He's one of the Midwest's most committed fire-breathing activists. So he's connected here again with Sean Wright, hosting a show. This seems to be our guy. This seems to be the Eric Sayward that was making threats to me on my Facebook instant message. Now, did you catch this? Look at the yellow highlight. Eric is a former U.S. Army demolitions specialist. So it appears this Eric here, whether this is true or not, was in the military. I didn't see that in any of his schooling, any of his background, and nowhere mentioned on his LinkedIn account. Army demolitions specialist. So that's very interesting. So a further search here shows that We Are Change. This is Eric Sayward and Donnie Tsunami. Another interview. And there it is, Eric Sayward's photograph. If you zoom in, that's an Army photograph of Eric Sayward. So it doesn't really match up with his background, going to the university, being a CEO of a corporation. And if you look at the bottom, he had his own website. A snapshot, ericsayward.com, was generated in 2011. And this is his page where he's actually running for Congress. Running for Congress in Wisconsin's 3rd District. Eric Sayward. Now if we do another search on Eric Sayward, it looks like he's into politics. 2016, I've got it highlighted here that Sayward indeed ran for President of the United States in 2016. It looks like he's into politics. We are very active. We are Change in Wisconsin, running for Congress, and now he's running actually to be the President of the United States. Another search shows that fundraiser site was helping, they were looking to fund, this is like a GoFundMe page or a fundraiser. Helping us launch BAP Nation successfully. Eric Sayward set this up, asked for $5,000 goal, no contributors. It was set up 5 years ago, nothing raised. So it looks like this was something to help set up some mainstream media site that never got really off the ground. In fact, not a single dollar was raised. So not sure what this was about. Now if we go to Eric Sayward's Sayward on YouTube, this congressional guy running for president has, if you look at the very top there, second line down, 122 subscribers. Now it doesn't take much to get a couple hundred subscribers on YouTube, but for a man this vocal, this a very active political CEO, great education, smart dude, 122 subscribers. Seems I would expect his subscribership to be larger than that. Now we get this. Now we get this video. Let's wait for it to load. There we go.
My name is Eric Sayward. I spent approximately 6 years in the U.S. Army and Army National Guard during and after Desert Storm as a combat engineer. I specialized in military-grade explosives like C4, TNT, and shaped charges. Basically, my training focused on building and blowing up airstrips, bridges, buildings, or anything else that would be, of strategic military importance. The first time I saw the footage of Building 7 collapse, I knew immediately that this was not only just a controlled demolition, but it was carefully planned out by a team of experts. Because
I'll pause it right there. Eric's photo is in the background, if you can see it. That is him. That's his Army photo. And in the back are some certifications or degrees or whatnot. I'm not sure what that is. Now, he says in the video that he spent 6 years following Desert Storm, which was 1991, in the Army. So that would place 1991, 6 years, up to 1997. And it looks like he founded that company, Wisbin, in 1998. That appears to be Mr. Sayward, and he is very active in We Are Change. Here's another video from the airport.
All right, We Are Change, Wisconsin. We're here at the airport. Let's see what happens.
Another plan. Let's go. All right, great. Head outside for a while. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go outside now. Hold up some time for a while. Then I'm going to come back here and get arrested. Contact. Hey, this is your point of contact.
He just witnessed us being very aggressively talked to by the TSA about their policies, and we will, we lasted about 7 minutes
here.
So hey, get the bull. You should get the bullhorn now. If you can do that out here.
Does it say anything about bullhorning?
Nope, they didn't say nothing. Here, hold
Look at the
these.
bullhorn.
Where's the car?
Here at the bottom.
All right.
It says at the very bottom, my name is Eric Sayward, and I will change the world. Reminds me of the post on my instant message where I will pay you a visit in all capital letters. So this is the guy, very active in We Are Change. Now keep in mind also that the Truther movement has been infiltrated. Many good people out there, many groups are infiltrated. We Are Change is one of the number one on the list of infiltrated by people acting to be looking for the truth, but actually plants by the government within the group to infiltrate. I'm not saying that Mr. Sayward is, but keep that in mind here as we go along. The next place I found Eric Sayward was on this political IRS form 8872, Political Organization Report of Contributions and Expenditures. I've got highlighted here the period ending September 30th, 2012. If you think back now of what was going on in the Gray State Project in 2012, this is when things were really hitting its high note. Things were moving along. The video, the trailer was released. The Gray State team had gone to Tampa for the Republican National Convention. They were touring around, and they were really getting some big exposure. And this group here, if you look at the name, number one organization, Gerson for Congress in Eagan, Minnesota. So now it looks like this person named Gerson, David Gerson, is running for Congress in the state of Minnesota. Further down on this report is it mentions third quarter again, and then it shows the number of contributions for the period. These reports are due quarterly, and for any political campaign, they've got to report this into the IRS on a quarterly basis. The amount of money in dollars that you collect in contributions and the amount of expenses that you pay in that quarter of expenses. And so right here, the thing that caught my eye was the $37,483 of expenses for the period. That's a lot. The line above it shows the income for the period, $1,650. So they didn't raise that much money. I'm not familiar with the Gerson for Congress campaign, but they didn't raise that much, but they certainly spent a lot. I went through the itemized deductions, the itemized expenditures, and looked at some of the things that caught my eye that related to the Gray State Project. Hothead Productions, that's David Crowley's production company, an expense of $3,083 back in July of 2012 for video production. Now that would make sense. David was doing a lot of filming and video production at that time. The next page I see a name, Eric Sayward, $500 in July, and the purpose of the expenditure was consulting. At the bottom of this I see another entry for Eric Sayward, $500 for consulting. Next page I see Sean Wright also doing some consulting for $1,000 in August of 2012. At the bottom is Eric Sayward, more consulting, $500. Next page here at the very top, Sean Wright, consulting for $1,500. Second line highlighted is Eric Sayward, consulting for $500. Next line, Eric Sayward, consulting for $500. And at the bottom, Eric Sayward, consulting for $500. Next page, Eric Sayward, consulting for $500. Jordan Page, $1,500. Now, Jordan Page is the musician that came out after the Crowley deaths were discovered and people were saying that he killed himself. Jordan Page was the first one to come out and say, well, that can't be because he had a $30 million movie budget that had been approved. And I don't believe after that statement Jordan Page said anything. But here it says the purpose of the expenditure was a fundraiser. Jordan Page paid $1,500 for a fundraiser that he put on. He's musically inclined, so it was some sort of fundraiser that he did for the Gerson for Congress. Then at the bottom here we see Eric Sayward, $500 for consulting. The next page, Sean Wright, $1,500 for consulting, and then Sean Wright, $3,500 for consulting. I put all these together, the items that had been highlighted on the previous pages. We see the Hothead Productions at the top for $3,000. That's David Crowley. Eric Sayward, $500. If you look at the dates, it looks like a weekly salary or a weekly per diem that he was paid to do consulting work for Gerson for Congress, $500 every single week. Sean Wright, his dates were more sporadic. His was at a higher level, $3,500, $1,000, $1,500, and $1,500 for a grand total of $7,500 that he was paid for that quarter. And the Jordan Page, the $1,500 for the fundraiser. Gray State related, if you add up those four buckets, that's $15,583. If you recall on the first page, the entire amount of expenses for the quarter for Gerson for Congress was $37,483. So it struck me odd that 42% of the expenditures for that quarter for Gerson for Congress campaign was sent out to these four individuals. Essentially, Gray State project. So that's a big chunk. That's 42% of their entire expenses for that quarter. Now on the web, if you do a search for Gerson for Congress, I went back and looked for the previous periods, and it does show the quarterly report, that 8872 report, the IRS form. If I go back to 2012, all I see, all the web shows is just the first one is just the second quarter. Quarter 2, no beginning balance, so it looks like they just started the campaign efforts for that congressional run, and total contributions $16,000 in, expenditures $3,000 out, and cash left on hand $12,000. So keep in mind, this is second quarter. This is second quarter, so this is April, May, and June activity. And so the next quarter that we're looking at here was July, August, September, where the payments were made to the Gray State project. So I'm not alluding to anything here, but it just seems odd that they only had $12,000 on hand. And keep in mind, the third quarter they started with $1,600 in. So they only had $16,000 on hand when the quarter started, and they proceeded to pay out $37,000 from the campaigns out of someone's pocket. I'm not sure where, or I'm not sure who, but I find that odd and noteworthy that it's also not listed on the 2012 Wikipedia for this election, for this campaign. There should be the second, third, and fourth quarters listed here with the grand totals. And my screenshot here shows just the one that ever made the web. And this is out there. This is public information. So there it is. It's all out there. Go ahead and do a search. Look at this. I don't think he didn't end up winning this Gerson, but this is a strange financial reports for Gerson for Congress. And then I found this strange video from Eric Sayward.
Yeah, this is good lighting, man.
Right here, this is good lighting.
This is really good. Now if I
can feel the light.
and I can also turn my light on, but I'd rather not.
All right, let's ask this guy. You got a second for us?
It's in.
I thought you were going to change.
Oh.
I thought you were going to say something compelling, like with the We Are Free stuff.
We are free.
For now, maybe.
What's up, David Crowley? Happy Dependence Day. With the Gray State looming.
Yeah, that's strangely ironic.
Strangely
I was
ironic.
about to say, like, I gotta go interview those guys. I got my camera set up.
Who are you with there?
I'm just here. I'm actually capturing B-roll so I can maybe sell it as stock footage online. Nothing major, but I met that Paul Tushy guy.
Eric? David Crowley from Hothead Productions, Gray State.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm a friend of Sean Wright's.
Of course, everyone's friends with Sean. That's not Tim working. I'm like, no way.
Right. Basically, I don't know, people keep telling us that, hey, you Wisconsin fuckers, you got it down pat. You guys got your shit together. I'm like, hey, thanks, because I felt like I was doing a shitty job. I've always felt like I could do more. So, you guys doing interviews or something? Yeah, why not? For whatever.
Your change?
Yeah, that's so weird. I saw the camera, I'm like, oh, who are these guys? And right, there goes Tim. You know?
So you're with your family?
Yeah.
Let's go say hi to them. I want to say hi to your daughter.
They're nervous. They would be nervous. I think you're not broadcasting. What are you doing?
No, it's just I'm on. Just rolling. We're just trying to get some people on what they think.
So after looking at that strange video with Eric Sayward meeting David Crowley on July 4th of that year, I'm not sure if it's 2012, probably was 2012, I had someone come forward and do a full criminal background check on Mr. Sayward. Remember now, we think that he is the CEO for Whizbin Company in Wisconsin with a degree from Wisconsin La Crosse. What I got back sent to me was 49 files in PDF format with an extensive criminal history for Mr. Eric Sayward. Now, I don't have time to go through each one of these, so I summarized them in a spreadsheet. Starting at age 21, 1993, we have an arrest for criminal damage to property, and Mr. Sayward jumped bail. 1996, he was 24 years old. There's an arrest for burglary. 1997, he was 25. Operation of a vehicle after revocation, DWI, speeding, driving an unregistered vehicle. So these were the 6 years that he was working essentially for the National Guard in and after the time of Desert Storm when he was working as a demolitions expert. 1999, we've got a failure to pay child support from Samina Grimes. He was sued by Equus Computer Systems for failure to pay. He was sued by the Department of Revenue for delinquent tax warrant for Sayward LLC. In the year 2000, he was sued by Jennifer and Jason Kuhl for failure to pay. He was evicted and sued by Helfrich Enterprises, sued by the Department of Revenue for delinquent tax warrant for Sayward LLC, and in 2001, sued by Department of Revenue for delinquent tax warrant for Sayward LLC. So the questions I have here, there's a couple. Number one, 98, he starts off working for a company called Whizbin Communications. Now it also shows here that he's running a business called Sayward LLC, which I see nothing on his LinkedIn, nothing about that, but he was certainly not paying his taxes, and so he was sued several times. It also looks like he was evicted, had child support issues, and drinking issues. Well, the next page, we're into the year 2002. Sued by the state of Wisconsin for issuing a worthless check, and evicted and sued by KWG Properties. 2003, sued by the state of Wisconsin for issuing a worthless check and did jail time. 2004, assault, battery, disorderly conduct resulted in jail time. He was also forced to take an alcohol assessment, drug assessment, domestic abuse assessment. So now he's 32 years old. I still don't see a history of employment anywhere for this individual. Whizbin Communications, he appears to be the sole proprietor of a web-based company that he just works for by himself, and it looks like to me that he just put down that he was the CEO. Probably was just a sole proprietorship company, and that's all it was, a one-person company. Now in 2005, we've got now a felony aggravated battery, disorderly conduct, did jail time, and a no-contact order with Cassandra or Carrie, and it was mentioned in the police report or in the court order in the sentence that he was not to attend or go inside any bars or taverns. This was in 2005. And at the very bottom, he also was arrested for unlawful use of a phone, making threats with obscenity, disorderly conduct, habitual criminality, and to have no contact with Cassie or her family. We've got a history of violence here, at least seems to be towards women. criminal habituality. Next page, 2006, he jumped bail and did jail time. He was also arrested for DWI, disorderly conduct, that resulted in no contact order with Corey or her son, keyword her son, another female, driving after revocation. Curfew was placed into effect from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Then he was arrested for disorderly conduct using 911 to call for a false emergency and did jail time. Mr. Sayward jumped bail, also on a disorderly conduct charge. Now we're in 2007. Disorderly conduct, bail jumping, habitual criminality. Then he did a 7-month jail sentence with electronic monitoring to follow after that sentence was done. He had a court order not to contact Amber. Then he jumped bail again and claimed in court, quote, "I don't want to be on bond anymore." The next item shows a no contact order with Corey. That's the same woman from before. Arrested for a DWI with open bottle and was sentenced to 3 years with an ignition interlock while he drives. So we don't have a little bit of crime here. We've got a long list of criminal behavior for Sean Sayward. In 2012, this is about the time now that he comes into contact with the Gray State. Sean Wright met him working on the project. It says here that he's sued now by Krista Kathleen Jahimiak to get a paternity test and to cover the insurance and birth expenses for her child. 2013, he was arrested for resisting arrest, obstructing an officer, and did jail time. 2013, he also driving while having a suspended license, speeding at an unreasonable speed. 2014, he was sued by River City Rentals for unpaid rent and evicted. So I don't believe this man's had a job, or a serious job. He's been evicted, kicked out of many of his apartments and rental locations. Nothing in 2015. Then we see in 2016 a speeding ticket and a failure to appear in court in Maricopa County, Arizona. 2017, looks like here he was sued by CAG Acceptance LLC for failure to pay, and then sued by Checkmate Express Corp for failure to pay. The last thing of all, just last year, these are pretty recent now, sued by AAA Auto Title Loans. And it looks like he tried to buy a car or something and didn't pay that. And had perhaps some debt consolidation or something to pay back some things. So this is a man sued many times, looking for cash, has a criminal history, and has aggression towards women. Eric James, I also found this from Wisconsin, mugshot. Now, if you look up in La Crosse County Circuit Court, there's an active warrant list, and feel free to use the link below to look this up if you question this. But as of this screen print I did on May 19th, just of this year, just last week, Eric James Sayward still has an outstanding warrant in Onalaska, Wisconsin. So it appears he moved to Phoenix, Arizona, but he still has an outstanding warrant. So I don't know what his background is, where he works, what he does, but none of this is really adding up. Now here's a post on Facebook. Eric Sayward posts on Facebook. Look at the date here. Yellow highlighted, Christmas Day, December 25th of 2014. The relevance of this post is multiple. Number one, it's Christmas Day. Because this video broadcast I'm doing is relating to the Gray State Project and the murder of David Crowley, the importance of Eric Sayward here now raises my interest to the next level when he makes a post on Christmas Day. Christmas Day, according to authorities, the article by Death of a Dystopian by Alec Wilkinson, all place the murders to be Christmas Day. Even the documentary, David's own father, Dan Crowley Sr., says David killed his family on Christmas Day 2014. This is a post on 2014 showing that Eric Sayward is now makes the following post. While everyone else was over eating, drinking, and opening their gifts, I was reading books with my daughter. What do you think she will remember more? Kind of a warm, fuzzy feeling here on this post. Nice guy, great father, doing things in the holidays. Because Sean Wright, his friend and also person with the Gray State Project, his strange tweet on Christmas Eve was the only post that he's put on Twitter in the last 5 years, was a photo of a Christmas tree on Christmas Eve. Seems odd that these Christmas Day things, Christmas Eve, especially in the year 2014 when the Crowleys were murdered, raised my suspicion. I looked up this post and I wanted to see if there was any editing done. Here's what I found. This post was edited. At 8:46 p.m., Eric Sayward made this post and actually received 10 likes. But a few minutes later, at 8:59 p.m., nothing was changed, but he edited it because he felt the need to include and tag 32 individuals and then repost the image, basically proving that he was there at Christmas reading stories to his daughter. Now that's odd. He didn't tag 1 or 2 people. He went out of his way to tag 32 people on Christmas Day. That just could be coincidence. Maybe that is what it is, and maybe I'm reading too much into it. Now further down on that very same post, a woman by the name of Shayla posts, "Is she at your house?" And then further down, the same Shayla writes, "Is she living with you now?" Here's what I think. We've got a post of Mr. Eric Sayward allegedly reading to his child on Christmas Day, and someone calling him out on his very own wall by saying, you don't have custody, she doesn't live with you, she wasn't even with you. Then, I'm guessing this picture was a photo that was taken at another time, uploaded and posted as if he was reading to her on Christmas Day. She's got some kind of tiara on. Neither of them are Christmas related. There's no Christmas decorations in the background of this image. This was clearly, I believe, in my opinion, taken at a different time of him reading a book to his daughter. He uploaded it, trying to make people believe that this is what he was doing Christmas Day. So we get the edited post. To me, this just screams alibi. I'm going to post as many people as I can. I'm going to tag as many people as I can so they can see me doing something good with my daughter, and you get one person calling him out by saying that couldn't be the case. It reminds me of this. Remember the ever-popular Sean Wright Twitter photo on December 24th of 2014 with showing stacks of gifts, stockings hung over the fireplace, Mr. Family Man Sean Wright, and then hadn't posted nothing on Twitter for 5 years. Why would he post this photo? Why would he post this as if he was home on Christmas Eve? So now we go on to see Mr. Eric Sayward on Facebook in a relationship. In August, we see Mr. Sayward moving to Arizona. This is after the murders now. Bodies were found of the Crowleys January. Kate Crowley was found August 9th or 10th. Eric Sayward is now in a relationship on the 11th. Moves to Phoenix to be moved in with his future wife Desiree. Phoenix, Arizona. Now his parents also relocated from Wisconsin to Arizona. So one could argue that he moved out of state to get away from the case. One could argue that he moved in with his parents because he couldn't pay the rent. He was facing legal and arrest warrants to this day in the state of Wisconsin. Who knows? But he gets engaged. Gets married.
How many
Get out of my
times?
house.
This is our house because I am your husband.
When they get here, I'm gonna break the lease out for them, and
how
they're
many-
gonna see it's not our house.
Legally, yes, it is.
No.
No, it's not. And I'm gonna call your dad right now and just ask.
Go ahead, and you put your hands on me several times. So please,
Because you won't get out of my house.
please.
I feel threatened in my house right now because
I feel threatened.
I asked for my key back. You.
Obviously some fighting there, some domestic issues, and as of just this week, as a real man, it's hard to say this, but I'm over my ex-wife. I just have to be honest. Now I have to move on. This is Eric Sayward now divorced. From the woman down there. Now his LinkedIn does show Phoenix, Arizona. He's updated that. He does say that he's a freelance web developer. It shows Wisbin Communications as the company that he works for. Shows his background as Wisconsin lacrosse. Only 109 connections. Now to wrap things up here on this video, we see his Facebook page here, Eric Sayward. Looks like his nickname is Way. It does show that he went to Onalaska High School. That confirms the first part that we watched on that education. Onalaska. Lives now currently in Phoenix. But I found this strange. It now shows that he's from Brooklyn, New York. I also found this. Eric Sayward appears to be shown here in a rap video under the musician artist name of Way.
I couldn't help but notice you by your lonesome, and I can see you looking back as if you want something. So I'ma ease up, buy you a drink and see if you and I can go back to the Jeep so we can cheat some. I keep it underneath the passenger seat by the B's button. After we leave, we keep it half of the week when the police come. And I can see that you ain't never been a cheap slug. I'm just a street thug, slowly on a mission for deep love. And we fuck many new positions are dreamed of. It seems rough the way that we be fucking the sheets up. IDs up, but she ain't really get it the weak stuff. And the week's up.
So in summary, is he a CEO of a company? Is he a rap artist? Is he a We Are Change or a criminal? You tell me what you believe. Thanks for listening. Hello, my name is Dan Hennen. Today is Hello, my name is Dan Hennen. Today is October 10th, 2018, and I'm going to be providing an update for the Crowley case updates. Tonight's episode, the case of the missing will. Catherine Kate Crowley, born 1964, died in 2015. Kate Crowley was David Crowley's mother, was Camille Crowley's mother-in-law, and Rannie Crowley's grandmother. So David and his sister Allison and his brother Dan Jr. Grew up with their mom Kate and their dad Dan Sr. They got divorced in the year 2000 and I believe it was 2005. Here's the Kate's obituary that was posted after she died. She was healthy, had 2 jobs, and was in good condition. They say that she simply died. There was no real explanation to it. And to the left here is a family photo taken in August 2014 at Rannie's birthday party there at the Crowley residence. And so that's 1 year later is when she was found dead in her home, unresponsive in her backyard. For those who don't recall, we have a lot of new members in the group. For those who don't recall, Kate Crowley lived in Owatonna, Minnesota, Her ex-husband Dan Sr. also lived in that same city, and that is about, I think, about a 35 to 40 minute drive away from Apple Valley, where the Crowley residence was, where the three bodies were found dead. And so that was January of 2015. Now, this is only less than 7 months later. The police report here in the local paper for Owatonna stated on August 9th, a death investigation for police. At midnight, officers responded to a death investigation report on Lancer Lane Northeast. So this is right at midnight, officers responded. On the 9th, she was found unresponsive and already dead, slumped over a chair, sitting in a chair next to a table on this back patio. And so she died on August 8th that evening. A welfare check was done, I believe, by her boyfriend, who hadn't received any phone calls earlier that night, hadn't heard from her. He did a welfare check, showed up, and then saw the body, called police. So this was after the midnight hour of August 9th and the early morning hours of August 9th, 2015. So we've got David Comel Raniel dead, bodies found January of 2015. The police reports come out, and the significance of this case is that the police reports came out and everyone bought into and went along with the official story that David killed his wife, his 6-year-old or 5-year-old daughter, and then himself in after being despondent and in a case of depression and whatnot, and then he did all this. Now, the police reports, the only mention of the 94-page police reports of anyone doubting the story was David's mother, Kate. She's the only one who said, I didn't believe this could happen this way unless they were either both in on it or they had some kind of an agreement or something, but this is not something David would do. That's why there's been so much scrutiny on the strange, suspicious death of Kate Crowley. And so we'll be getting into that more here. So there's the back patio of her home where the body was found in Owatonna, Minnesota. In looking into the estate and what would happen to the estate, there was questions and concerns as far as the benefit, the motive. If this was not just an accidental death, who would have been behind it? And so in looking for this, we see the court documents for the estate of Catherine Crowley, deceased. We see the petitioner as Daniel J. Crowley. That is the David's brother, DJ. This is Daniel J. And so he was the one who filed the paperwork to get the ball rolling on the estate. He used an attorney named Gregory C. Olsen that he retained for this. And what we see on August 19th of 2015, the highlighted in the yellow, is a statement of content, either lost, destroyed, or unavailable will, document ID number 4. And that kind of perked up our interest there as far as the will. Being only 51 years old, folks were wondering if she had a will. If she did, if she didn't, did she have money? Was there any sort of reason to have her, anyone to have her dead? And so when we saw this was fairly interesting as far as the will destroyed or unavailable or lost. And what we get here now, just this week, an individual, a citizen investigator, found this information and provided it to me here, the following. The first thing is here, this document to the above named court, the undersigned Allison Crowley respectfully states she's the daughter, a surviving daughter. So Kate has died, and she was divorced, not remarried, and so the only remaining members left of the family is her son DJ and her daughter Allison. Allison here in this paperwork, she's living in Chicago at the time. She's basically, if you look at number 4 there, she renounces any right to the appointment as to the personal representative and hereby nominates her brother Daniel J. as the personal representative of the above named estate. So really, she's signing away her rights here on August 14th to say that, you know what, I want my brother to be in charge. I want my brother to take over this. and that was on the 14th. So this explains, if we go back here a page, why Daniel Crowley is the one doing the petitioning. That question was raised. Why was he first to inquire about her estate? But it really wasn't. It was Allison did the paperwork, signing it over to Daniel J. So Dan Jr. now on the 19th goes and begins his course of business, prepping the estate here for his late mother. So she signed it away. We've got this. The next form here is paperwork also filed on August 19th in the 3rd District Court. So if you look at the top right, in the middle right, all uppercase, it says Statement of Contents of Lost or Otherwise Unavailable Will for a deceased person. And so it says here, the undersigned states to the above-named court that the original last will and testament of the above-named decedent is unavailable because it is lost, and that the will contained the following. The residue of the estate as follows: to my spouse, number 1, if my spouse survives me. Now, Kate's not married. She's divorced in 2005. Number 2 is, if my spouse does not survive me, then I devise and said residue to be divided into equal shares and distributed to my children. And so they couldn't find the will. They looked for it and couldn't find the will, but whoever it was that went basically says, we don't have it, but here's what it stated. And so take that how you wish, but whatever she had the final funds going into, it says now it's going to be divided to the equal shares. So really, Allison and Dan Jr. would get all the remaining assets. She did not have lots of money. She was not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. She did have debts and bills to pay, but there still was excess carryover that was left, and that was then divvied up between Allison and Dan Jr. And if you read here on this next page, it's very interesting. There's 4 things. I want to cover the first 3 items. Number 1, Daniel T. Crowley. This is the former spouse of the decedent. It says here on number 1 that he went through the decedent's legal documents and records after her death and was unable to locate the original of the will after conducting a thorough and exhaustive search. So it looks like he was able to go into her records and her personal belongings to look for it, and says that he was unable to locate it, a hard copy of the will. Number 2, they contacted the attorney's office responsible for the drafting of the will. The will was prepared at the office of Gregory C. Olsen of Patton, Hoverston, and Berg, PA, who verified that the original will was not contained in the client's file, which was on record there. So let's reiterate here, item number 2, they couldn't find the original will, which means that at one point Kate Crowley had a will. She went so far as to have an attorney, Gregory Olsen here, who was also representing Dan Jr. in the estate. She at one point must have gone to him to have a will prepared. And so now the ex-husband couldn't find it, the lawyer couldn't find it, and then number 3, inquiries were made within the family as to whether or not anyone had knowledge of a new will being executed, since the old will dated March 13, 2006. And it says here, a thorough and exhaustive search was made for the will shortly after the death, and there was no information as to any such will being found. So let's go back. They were divorced in 2005. Kate Crowley had a will done with the help of Gregory C. Olsen on March 13th of 2006. So right away, young divorced mother of 3 goes and gets a will done at an attorney's office at Patton, Hoverston, and Berg. Now, the will goes missing in between time, so they don't know if there was an updated will, a new version, anything of the sort. But A thorough and exhaustive search of the home, item number 1, couldn't be found. Item number 2, at the law office, they couldn't be found. And number 3, the remaining people of the family, the remaining family members, could not or did not know or was even aware of a will. So this gets to the title of the broadcast, The Mystery, the Case of the Missing Will. We had been under the assumption here, looking into the investigation of the Crowley case and subsequently the Kate Crowley case, that we didn't think there was a will. We just thought that she died, she was young, and nothing came of it. It did perk up our ears as there was a strange, the secretness of the death, as far as family members even found out of Kate's passing on our Facebook page for the Crowley case, because it was very secretive the way that was handled and that information was disseminated. And so now we find out that there was indeed a will, in fact, way back in 2006. Now the strange thing for me here is that not only could they find the will, the hard copy will, but they went to the attorney's office and could not find the will. So hopefully on this video here, in the comments section below, those of you who are attorneys and whatnot, feel free to make a comment. Is that common? Or aren't they required to keep the copy of the will of their clients on site? So let's try to clarify that. So anyway, Gregory Olsen could not find it. The last page of this information here that was forwarded to me by a citizen investigator was this state of Minnesota, Steele County, which is Owatonna, is Daniel J. Crowley declaring, states under oath that the representation in the foregoing statement is true as far as he knows, and that such a statement is true and complete to the best of his knowledge. He's signed off. In fact, it's a notary signature, then a stamp besides, and at the very bottom you see it's Gregory, Olsen, Patton, Halberstam, and Berg. So he signs off. It's good to go. This is August 19th of 2015. She dies the 8th. I find the body on the 9th, and here we go, 19 days later. Everything's kind of gone through, and in 10 days they can't come up with anything, and so they give the remaining assets to equally between Allison and Dan Jr. So I began to look into the background of this Gregory Olsen. His name has come up a couple of times here. He does work here, it looks like, for Patton, Halberstam, and Berg, PA. This is the website. It does show the profiles of their lawyers and their attorneys on staff, and they've got several locations. And here is Mr. Gregory Olsen. So he's handling. He was, I guess, a family lawyer on the Kate Crowley side, and then did the will. And then when Dan Jr. went to go get the claim with Allison as well, they also worked with Gregory Olsen. So they went to the offices of Patton, Halberstam, and Berg. Now, if I go to LinkedIn and pull up Patterson, Halberstam, and Berg, I see that there's 17 employees on LinkedIn. So rather small office, some paralegals, some attorneys, and I don't see Mr. Greg Olsen's name there mentioned. And so there is a page 2. Here's the second list of employees there at the firm on LinkedIn. I don't see a Gregory Olsen there at all. Now, if I go and do an actual search on LinkedIn for Gregory Olsen, his name does come up as just Greg Olsen. It looks like he's not linked to his actual employer for Patton and for the full name, but he's got listed here just PH&B Law Offices. Now, I find it strange he only has 3 connections. Not connected to the firm, only 3 connections. Usually attorneys have very well connected with what it is they're doing. So go back to the page, and certainly enough, even though he's not listed there on LinkedIn, he certainly is a member. There's his picture again with the rest of the team. So Gregory C. Olsen does in fact work there. just may not be too involved in LinkedIn to keep his information up to speed, but that is something different. All right, his background and his profile shows his various bar admissions and his certifications. He's been around for a while here, first getting admitted to the bar in 1978, so he's been around for a while and has been an attorney lawyer for many years. That also could explain the lack of information on the LinkedIn site, as many younger folks keep that page up to date. Older folks do not have that much interest in that, so that could explain that. His education was University of Minnesota, Bachelor of Arts in 73, then got a master's degree in 81, and then got his law degree from Hamlin in 1977. So he's been around for a while. Now, what I was interested in here for, thinking of how someone could lose the will here, I wanted to see what his background was. Where did Mr. Greg Olsen work in the past? It shows currently that he's an attorney at Patton, and we see that. And that is correct. That makes sense. He's been there since 2007. And then attorney, law offices of Gregory C. Olsen from 78 to 2007. So for many years, looks like he ran his own law firm, his single practice there by himself, right after getting his degree. So it doesn't appear that he worked anywhere. Got his degree and started his own law practice, and then listed as an adjunct professor at the University of St. Thomas since 1984 to present. That's pretty good university here in the Twin Cities area. So I began to do some research looking up here with the Secretary of State, Office of Minnesota Secretary of State. I couldn't find any business record searches for law offices of Gregory Olsen. I did a search for active statuses, inactive statuses, and it contains the name Gregory C. Olsen or the phrase law offices of Gregory C. Olsen. And as you see there at the bottom, no results match. So he may have just been running his own business and never filed or never set it up or never registered his business. So I thought, well, let's go to the St. Thomas website. And St. Thomas here, University of St. Thomas, here's the actual website of their adjunct faculty. So you can go right there to the website, and anyone can scroll down the list of adjunct professors that they've got and can see how many people are currently on staff. It's listed in alphabetical order. Let me click this here, try to scroll down. There we go. A lot of adjunct professors listed alphabetical at the University of St. Thomas. Many. Listed from A all the way through last name Will. I don't see a Gregory Olsen listed at all. He's been there since 1984, adjunct professor, so that's about 34 years at the university. And so here it is, alphabetical. Let's go to the letter O. I see a Brett Olander. I don't see a Greg Olsen at all. Gregory Olsen. So maybe they just forgot to list his name on their website. Pretty prestigious school there. Looks like they've got all these up to date. Can't imagine they would have forgot about Mr. Greg Olsen, but perhaps they did. But he's been there for 34 years. Now the other thing is that profile may not be updated with his current employer, so maybe he no longer is an adjunct professor And I had thought about that as well. I did a Google search relating to St. Thomas University, the phrase adjunct professor and the name Gregory C. Olsen on Google, and in fact, nothing came up. So nothing came up at all, as if he ever worked there or was ever an adjunct professor at all. So I'm beginning to question Mr. Olsen's background. And so I've got a premium account here at the White Pages. Looked him up, looked up his background. A couple things came up that were strange, not out of the ordinary, but I just consider them strange. I've got a speeding ticket here. 65 and a 55 by Mr. Gregory Olsen. That was just this January, it looks like. And then we go to the next page. We've got a charge 1 of a DWI back in 97. Charge 2 of a second DWI. This was less than a year later, his second one. And if you look at the highlighted mention there, September 1st of 98, pulled over by the Minnesota State Patrol in Rochester with a .20 gross misdemeanor, and I'm assuming on that first case he would have been under a 1 or 2 year probation after the first DWI. So this would have been a violation of his with the second DWI, and that's why they listed it up here as a gross misdemeanor. The first one looks like, if you look under the disposition, it says dismissed. DWI dismissed back in 97, then one within the year that's convicted, they jack it up to a gross misdemeanor. And that 2 dash, that's 2 within a 5-year period. And then charge number 3 is a failure to display ATV registration tags. That looks to be probably a 4-wheeler or some kind of all-terrain vehicle. So some trouble with the law, not big, and that took place in the year 2000. And last of all, we see here on that same background report a bankruptcy charge for Mr. Gregory Olsen. So it looks like in 2012, Greg Olsen filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy charges. And so, strange goings-ons here with this case. And once again, whether it's the Crowley case from Apple Valley, the triple murder case that we've been looking into, or the Kate Crowley strange, suspicious, mysterious death. Now we find out that she did in fact have a will, and that will was done at an attorney's office, saved and signed, and now it's surprisingly went missing. And so it's just one more strange, odd, coincidental thing relating to this case. Once again, please leave your comments below here with any suggestions you have, or if you were an attorney or with an attorney background, clarify some of this stuff for the rest of us here. Thanks for listening.